In the prison shoe shop, Jimmy Valentine was busy making shoes. A prison officer came in and took Jimmy to the prison office. There, he was given an important piece of paper. It said that he was free. Jimmy took the paper without showing much excitement. He had been sentenced to 4 years in prison, but he had only been there for 10 months. He had expected to stay just 3 months. Jimmy had many friends outside, and a man with so many friends doesn't expect to stay in prison long. "Valentine," said the chief prison officer, "you're free to go tomorrow morning. This is your chance. Become a better man. You're not a bad person deep down. Stop breaking into safes and live a better life." "Me?" said Jimmy, surprised. "I've never broken open a safe in my life." "Oh, no," the chief officer laughed. "Never? Then how did you end up in prison for breaking a safe in Springfield? Was it because you didn't want to tell where you really were? Maybe you were with a lady and you didn't want to say her name? Or was it because the judge didn't like you? You men always have some reason. You never go to prison just because you broke into a safe." "I was never in Springfield," said Jimmy, still confused. "Take him away," said the officer. "Get him some clothes for leaving. Bring him back here at 7 tomorrow morning. And think about what I said, Valentine." At 7:15 the next morning, Jimmy was back in the office. He was wearing new clothes that didn't fit well and new shoes that hurt his feet. These were the usual clothes given to prisoners when they leave. They gave him some money for the train ride to a town near the prison, plus $5 extra. The $5 were meant to help him start a better life. The chief prison officer shook his hand. That was the end of Jimmy Valentine, prisoner 9762. Mr. James Valentine walked out into the sunlight. He didn't listen to the birds singing or notice the trees or the flowers. He went straight to a restaurant where he enjoyed the first taste of freedom. After a good meal, he went to the train station. He gave a few coins to a blind man sitting there and then got on the train. 3 hours later, he got off the train in a small town. He went to Mike Dolan's restaurant. Mike was there alone. He shook Jimmy's hand and said, "I'm sorry we couldn't do it sooner, Jimmy, but there was that safe in Springfield. It wasn't easy. How are you feeling?" "I'm fine," Jimmy said. "Is my room ready?" Jimmy went upstairs and opened the door to his room. It looked just as he had left it. It was where they had found him when they took him to prison. On the floor was a small piece of cloth, torn from a cop's coat during a struggle. There was a bed against the wall. Jimmy pulled it toward the middle of the room and found a small door in the wall. He opened it and pulled out a dusty bag. He opened the bag and smiled at the tools inside. These were the best tools for breaking into safes, and he was very proud of them. He had spent over $900 to have them made by experts. Half an hour later, Jimmy came downstairs, dressed in nice clothes that fit him well. He was carrying his cleaned and dusted bag. "Do you have everything ready?" Mike asked. "Me?" Jimmy said, acting surprised. "I work for the New York famous bread and cake makers company. I sell the best bread and cakes in the country." Mike laughed and enjoyed the joke. Jimmy had a drink of milk, as he never drank anything stronger. A week after Jimmy was released from prison, a safe was broken into in Richmond, Indiana. $800 were stolen. 2 weeks later, another safe was opened in Logansport, and $1,500 was taken. Then, a safe in Jefferson City was opened, and $5,000 were stolen. Ben Price, a detective who worked on these kinds of cases, began investigating. He visited Richmond and Logansport to see how the safes had been broken into. He said, "I can see that Jim Valentine is back in business. He's the only one who could open a safe like this. I want him caught. The next time he goes to prison, he'll stay there until his time is done." Ben Price knew how Jimmy worked. He would travel from city to city, working alone, and always leaving quickly. He enjoyed meeting good people and didn't get caught easily. One afternoon, Jimmy Valentine arrived in a small town called Elmore. He looked like a young man who might be a college student. He walked down the street and saw a young lady walk across the street and enter a building. The sign above the door read the Elmore Bank. Jimmy looked into her eyes and immediately forgot who he was. He felt like a different man. The young lady looked away, and a little color came to her cheeks. Young men like Jimmy didn't come to Elmore very often. Jimmy asked a boy near the bank about the town. Later, the young lady came out and walked past Jimmy without noticing him. "Is that young lady Polly Simpson?" Jimmy asked. "No," the boy said. "That's Annabelle Adams. Her father owns this bank." Jimmy went to the hotel where he said his name was Ralph D. Spencer. He rented a room and asked the hotel clerk about starting a business in the town. The man said that Elmore needed a good shoe shop, as shoes were sold in general stores, but not in specialized shops. Mr. Spencer decided to stay a few days and learn about the town. The man thought his clothes and manners were very good, and he was happy to talk to him. Mr. Spencer stayed in Elmore and opened a successful shoe shop. He made many friends, and he met Annabelle Adams. He liked her more each day. A year later, Mr. Spencer's shop was doing well, and he was going to marry Annabelle in 2 weeks. Annabelle's father, the banker, liked Spencer, and Annabelle was proud of him. He seemed to be a perfect fit for her family. One day, Jimmy sat down to write a letter to one of his old friends. "Dear old friend, I want you to meet me at Sullivan's place next week, on the evening of the 10th. I want to give you my tools. You couldn't buy them for $1,000. I'm finished with my old life. I haven't done anything wrong for over a year. I have a nice shop, and I'm going to marry the best girl on earth in 2 weeks. It's the only life for me. I would never touch another man's money. After I marry, I'm moving further west, where no one will know me from my old life. She's a wonderful girl. She trusts me. Your old friend, Jimmy. The night after Jimmy sent the letter, Ben Price quietly arrived in Elmore. He moved around the town slowly, gathering information. He watched Ralph D. Spencer walk by. You're going to marry the banker's daughter, are you, Jimmy? Ben said to himself. I'm not so sure about that. The next morning, Jimmy was at the Adams house. He was leaving for a nearby city to buy clothes for the wedding and a gift for Annabelle. It had been over a year since he had done anything illegal. Most of the Adams family went to the bank that morning. Mr. Adams, Annabelle, Jimmy, and Annabelle's married sister, with her 2 young daughters, passed Jimmy's hotel. Jimmy went up to his room, grabbed his bag, and joined them. They all went into the bank, where Mr. Adams showed off his new safe, which was as big as a small room. The safe had a special door that could only be opened at certain times, controlled by a clock. The banker was very proud of it and wanted everyone to see. While they were looking at the safe, Ben Price entered the bank. He told the young man working there that he wasn't there on business, but was waiting for someone. Suddenly, there was a shout. The 2 little girls had been playing, and May, the 9-year-old, had accidentally locked her sister Agatha inside the safe. Mr. Adams tried to open the door, but it wouldn't open. The clock hadn't been set yet, so the door couldn't be opened. We can't open it, Mr. Adams cried. The clock hasn't started. Agatha's mother cried out in panic. She will die in there. Do something. There's no one around here who can open this door, said Mr. Adams, shaking. What should we do? Annabelle turned to Jimmy, her eyes full of pain and hope. Can't you do something, Ralph? Jimmy looked at her, a soft smile on his lips. Annabelle, he said, give me that flower you're wearing. She was confused, but gave him the flower. Jimmy tucked it carefully into his coat and then, for the first time, became Jimmy Valentine again. Step back from the door, all of you, he said, with a commanding voice. He took out his bag and set it on the table. He quickly laid out the tools and began to work. In just 10 minutes, he opened the door. Agatha was safely pulled out, and her mother held her tightly. Jimmy picked up the flower, put on his coat, and walked toward the door. Just then, a voice called, Ralph! Jimmy didn't stop. At the door, Ben Price stood in his way. Hello, Ben, Jimmy said, still smiling. You finally found me. Let's go. I don't care anymore." Ben Price stood silently for a moment and then said, "I guess I was wrong about this, Mr. Spencer. I don't believe I know you." And with that, Ben turned and walked away.